Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to have you here today. Hello and welcome. As a starting, please tell us in the chat, tell us where you're joining in from. I know we have a global crew with us today, and I'm super excited to let you know that today is our 7th Space for Change. We have these every single month. So please continue to join us. This is our 7th. We're really, really proud of this. And today we're excited to have you here because our topic is just really, really compelling. Before I jump into that, I'm Christina Herrera from Christina Herrera Consulting. I fell in love with Earth to Mars and with Andrew and with Hugo. They are my change management soulmates. And we are on a mission to bring humanity back into the business equation. And that's why this conversation is so important today. And this is why I'm a vision partner with Earth to Mars. Today, we're going to be chatting with Nick Ferguson to discuss the power of AI in change and how we can leverage AI to keep up with the pace of change. So I'm curious to find out from you. Let me know what your impression is in the chat when I say AI. Is that a
nothing to cry about, guys? It's okay. We're all safe.
Do you feel scared? Are you excited? Are you concerned? Are you worried? Pop it in the chat. I've got to hear it because everyone comes from different perspectives. That's fantastic.
I think that's our youngest participant yet, Christina.
Absolutely. And I love it. I love it so much. Excited, kind of excited, but cautious. Yep, that's a good one. Okay, I've heard a lot of that. Anxious and suspicious, but open. Okay, love that. Looking forward to driving AI in change. Curious, ambiguous. Yes, I've got a lot of curious there, so this is fantastic. Love
what do you
that.
want,
yes.
Peter?
There we are. Hold on. There we go. Hey, Rachel. Hi, everyone. So I can see everyone's joining in. We've got participants from Australia, different areas of Australia, New Jersey, New York. Fantastic. Well, I'm really excited to have you today. We've got Nick Ferguson that's going to chat to us about AI in the world of change. But AI really does strike fear. For some, it's a real fear for some people, and some of people are starting to think, like, is HR starting to sound for hardly relevant? Are the machines going to be taking over my job? Are the robots stealing my job, or is AI going to make managers redundant? And at the end of the day, I mean, some people are just like, you know what, F this, let's just move to Mars because I just don't know how to deal. Today, we're here to tell you, do not worry. We're going to show you, and we're going to explain and unpack what this really means and how you can leverage AI in change. So please grab your phones in the true collaborative spirit and co-collaborative spirit of Earth to Mars. Grab your phone and scan the QR code. And I've got 3 questions to ask you. You got that? Now, if you can't scan the code, go to ahaslides.com/power AI. There we are. Okay, are you ready for your first question? So, there's the QR code again, just in case. ahaslides.com/power AI. You can QR code that as well. So our first question for you is, you need a heart transplant. What would you rather? Have an autonomous robot perform the whole surgery on you? Have a robot perform surgery with a supervised person? Or pay a premium for a human-centric doctor to perform surgery supported by robots? So this is really interesting already. Look at this split. Wow, you would rather pay a premium for a human-centric doctor. And we do have a couple coming in right now saying autonomous, fully autonomous. Look at that. Yes. and a good medium there. Well, how about the next question? Look, congratulations, you have children. What would you rather? Would you rather have an autonomous robot supervise and educate your children in school? Would you pay a little bit extra for robots with human supervision, or pay a premium for inspiring human teacher supported by AI and robots? Wow, look at that. Okay, yep, a huge 75% would rather pay a premium for a inspiring human teacher to teach your children in schools. Fantastic. Well, guys, next question. You are on a work trip and staying 7 nights away from home. What would you rather? Stay at a fully automated hotel with zero human service or support, pay a bit extra and stay at a fully automated hotel with humans here and there to support us back up, or pay a premium and have an amazing human experience and service supported by technology, right? Remember those days when we traveled? I know I can see a couple of laughing emojis. I don't know, some of you might be traveling already, but I can see the preference is on the human experience. And it's been quite consistent through these 3 questions. I can see that middle one creeping up a little bit more there. But I can see that some of you are also more comfortable with saying, you know what? Give me the fully automated. Okay, I see we've got some really brave soldiers here in the house tonight. I say tonight because I'm in the US, but good morning to everyone in Australia. Thank you so much. Andrew, jump in. What did you think about that?
Oh man, I love it, Chris. Thank you. I love running this poll with you, and thank you everyone for your participation here. And it was quite interesting to see, because when I first ran this poll a couple of years ago, it was probably like 97% of people wanted fully human. But we're starting to see a lot more comfort with a bit of a hybrid and an automation. And I think we've got the pandemic to thank for that. But what I love is what an opportunity amongst all the fears, amongst all the confusion, the ambiguity, the curiosity. There is a huge opportunity here for us in change. Whether you're driving transformation as a leader, whether you're a CIO and doing digital, or whether you're in the change space like us. And I sometimes sit up at night and I ask myself, well, what if we let robots just be robots and let them do all the boring, dangerous, mundane parts of our role? And I'm sure we've seen that in the information age, where a lot of it was data capture, or especially in change, filling out templates and silly things like that. Whereas this new age demands a change leadership style that actually embraces people, that's human-centric, that is focused on the human things. And in there lies the opportunity, I think, for all of us who are clearly passionate about people here and technology, that if we can take the roboticness out of what we do in leadership, out of what we do in change, out of what we do in coaching, I think we can really get back to why we go to work in the first place, which is to serve people, which is to help, which is to be creative and find solutions to some of the world's problems instead of doing boring transactional kind of things. So I think there's a massive opportunity in this space where we can let go of this burnout. Time and time again, when I talk to change managers, or when Christine and I train up change managers, is we hear about this pace of change and the burnout and the fatigue that's happening out there. But what if we can start letting go of this addiction to do it and hand that over to automation and robots, and we can focus more on being human, creating, collaborating, and really problem solving and getting more strategic. So I'm glad you love it, Amira. I love it too. So really appreciate that. So with that said, we polled our Space for Change group. We've got a LinkedIn group of transformational leaders out there. Some of us agree, some of us disagree, and we love that because we love having these different conversations. And we actually polled this group, Space for Change, and it was very interesting to see. So if you're sitting here going, oh my God, I've never really used AI or really fully automated something, you're not alone here. And I think particularly in the change space, there's a real opportunity here to automate, but also a real opportunity here to also start integrating AI over the time. And this is exactly why we have asked the amazing Nick Ferguson from Leviant to join us. Now, just a bit of background on Nick. I met Nick at a Change Management Institute function. It was actually a face-to-face one, so we managed to squeeze one in the middle of some of our lockdowns in Australia. And Nick and I didn't stop talking about human-centered design, AI, collaborative technology. And it was really nice to meet and another fellow soulmate in the change space that's just really finding this hybrid model of focusing on the human side of change and co-creating and letting tech do all the techie stuff like templates and all the stuff that takes time but doesn't add as much value to what we do in change. So Nick, without further ado, welcome to Space for Change. It is a pleasure and a privilege to have you on board. I believe you've done your thesis as well on AI. So
yeah, I did.
We've got amazing people.
Thanks for having me, guys. This is a really exciting topic, and yeah, echo your sentiments there, Andrew. To have met someone of a similar interest level in one of the rare face-to-face events we've had in the last couple of years was just great. So it's really wonderful to be here, and I'm really excited to be sharing a couple of things I'm quite passionate about today. A few things about what we're going to get out of today. So we're really looking at how do we understand and unpack a little bit more about what AI is and can do. And we'll quickly move through to how you can use it. So we're going to be talking about the world of change management as one of our arms of consulting, and how you might be able to automate some of the things that really don't add a lot of value to you, probably take up a lot of time, so that you can focus on the important human parts of what you do for work, to bring out the insights and to bring out the really important parts of why you've been hired in the first place. There's a huge topic, so lots to talk about, but I'm really excited to run through some great information today. So the real question I want to explore with you all is, how does AI play a role, and what do we do to make that get started? Little pause point on what is AI. So there's a lot of different definitions. Many of them are still emerging and evolving, but one I quite liked was one that KPMG had published a couple of years ago now, talking about it's a collection of automated tools or processes which allow tasks to be completed by acting like a human. So that's things like basic process automation, like workflow or robotic process automation, all the way through to thinking like a human. So this is things like enhanced automation or cognitive automation, doing parts of the thinking for us. And that'll be things like our natural language processing, self-learning, and optimizing various things. So that's one version of what AI is to me. And importantly, there's different levels of it as well. So we might start off with assisting technologies, things that help us do our job that little bit easier, through to augmenting technologies, which is where we might be replacing parts of processes with intelligent agents, all the way through to autonomous technologies, things that can work almost without our input at all. And no doubt you can think of a couple of examples of that as we move through. All right, so let's start off with, what do we mean by AI? So this section here, I just want to pause on what we mean. So there's really three elements that we can talk about. And the first one being automation, that simplified, where we're trying to take the robot out of the human. So those robotic repetitive tasks, it might be data entry, it might be reading lots of information. How do we take that out of us and let the robot do it instead? At the top, it's that engagement piece. So how do we have robots replace, or as part of what we do in speaking to humans or engaging with the people that we might otherwise be talking to? Think chatbots, think call centers, taking that first part of the conversation to triage into which specialist do we need to speak to. And finally, the cognitive insights. So how do we put the human, the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we empathize, how do we put that into the robot and into the code? And so this is some of our challenge for today. A few things worth mentioning, though: we won't be able to automate everything. There's various roles that we can't do as an AI system at the moment. Things like a therapist, things like creative problem solvers, artists, and probably things like change managers. We can't fully automate those things just yet, but just the parts. Expanding on those elements, I thought it was worth thinking about what types of projects are we seeing in the industry at the moment. And overwhelmingly, it's the automation piece of that, taking the robot out of the human. So things like transferring data from one place to another, reading lots and lots of boring legal documents, AI systems that are automated can do that really well. And there's a lot of funding and a lot of tools that exist in that. But we're seeing a lot of increase in efforts to automate the thinking part, putting the human into the robot. So predicting what a customer might say, automating ads, Netflix related suggestion models, and real-time credit fraud monitoring are some of those things that a person might be doing, but AI is starting to do. And no doubt we've all seen AI chatbots and 24/7 customer service agents. This is a really big growing area that we'll see more and more of in the coming years. All right, so let's move into just a little bit of the techie side. What's in a robot? What is this AI thing we're talking about? So it's really an algorithm or a series of algorithms. And just to define a difference, software and a lot of the things we're used to, it's a traditional software, which is a set of procedural instructions, something that the code will follow, and we're going to get a predictable result at the end. That's an algorithm. But AI is also an algorithm, but it's a little bit different. And it's more of a fuzzy set of instructions. So it might be more uncertain, more messy, a little bit probabilistic. And this means that we might not know the answer going in, or we might not know the question going in, but the algorithm is designed to achieve that result. All right. Here are a couple of icons you might recognize. Have a quick think in the chat if you like. Which of these do you think have algorithms in them? And which of these do you think have AI in them? Are there any that don't have AI? These are all things that might be familiar for some of you. If you don't recognize on the right, that's Iron Man, our favorite Avenger. And Iron Man may or may not have some AI in him. All have AI, lots of questions here. Or even the paperclip, that's right. Yeah, great. So the simple answer is, everyone, all of these have some version of AI in them. They might be different levels, and obviously some are more advanced. Clippy, if we remember him from back in the day in Microsoft Word days, helpfully helping us with our Word document. That's a cruder form of AI, but really a great example of an early chatbot that worked quite well. Netflix, really good recommendation algorithms in the background, so definitely a good example of AI. Google, a very, very impressive suite of AI behind the scenes. We wouldn't really see it because it's just so simple, but behind the scenes, really powerful. Tesla, obviously working on the automated driving cars, so some really powerful AI in there. Siri, a really good example of an evolution of an intelligent agent. And Iron Man, powered by an AI system called Jarvis, which stands for just a really very intelligent system, if you didn't know. Let's look at the next one. A quick question again, where do you think we're at today, given we know that we've got some technology and capability? What number would you say we have available in the world, in our world today? From basic automation of repeating basic things, advanced automation to things like Siri and working with some important systems. Autonomous automation might be our self-driving cars and other discrete things that do it by themselves. Artificial general intelligence, thinking at a similar level to a human. Or AI overlords, our Terminator, Skynet movie level of AI. Lots of questions coming in around the 3 mark, 2.5, 3 to 4. We've got 1, 4 there, 4 or 5. Yeah, so what the research is showing us at the moment and what the technology is doing is probably around about the 2.5 to 3.5 mark. So commonly the things that you and I would use in our day-to-day life is going to be between 2 and 3. There are many examples of 3, things that can fully work by themselves without our help. And some examples at IBM and at Amazon and at Google of very, very, very intelligent systems. What's worth mentioning is 4 and 5, there's a lot of debate if we'll ever get there. A fully general intelligent system has never been proven, and there's some really interesting debates about if it can ever think just as well as we can, and if it can be just as adaptable. That's for another day, but I just wanted to call out, we have some very good capabilities and tools that we can all use right now, and I'm going to be showing you some of those later today. All right. So a little bit of stats for you. So one of the interesting things I found when I was researching is there's a lot of fear around robots taking our jobs. And I wanted to just highlight a few facts for you that might help you, as I'm sure all of us one day will probably be dealing with AI. And as change managers, no doubt it'll be a project we'll be doing at some point in the future. And there's a lot of genuine fear for what that means for people. So the World Economic Forum suggests that 40 to 60% of jobs worldwide will be changed nearly 50% by 2022 due to the introduction of various systems. Now, a lot has been written worldwide, but not so much about Australia. So Bankwest Curtin Economic Centre over in Perth did a really interesting study as well, looking at what these changes mean in Australia. And approximately 60% of people think that it will be greatly impacting their jobs over time. More than half expect their jobs to change to some degree within the next 5 years. And the OECD predicts about 14% of existing Australian roles could disappear over time. So that's interesting. It's not talking major changes to the job itself just yet, but over time, parts of it will transform, and that's to be expected. McKinsey did a study as well in 2019. About 50% of work tasks could be displaced or changed by 2030. So we're on a journey where our worlds will be changing to some degree, part by part, over the next 8 years. So what does that mean for our, just staying on that slide just a moment, please, Andrew. So what that means for us as practitioners and as consultants, it's really thinking about which tasks should we be automating. You know, obviously, there are certain things we know that are hard, are boring, are time consuming, those transactional type activities that are a real grind for us to do. We've got traditional parts of a job that probably won't change. And then there's the transformational parts, the things where you really add value as a person, as a consultant, as a practitioner. So my challenge in this talk today is, how do we identify the transactional tasks that add minimal value so we can focus on the transformational tasks where all of the value sits? And I'm going to take you through a process shortly for how you might do that. A few other points just making is that the real value in getting this right only comes from understanding the correct pairing of what you do best with what AI does best. And simply siloing your efforts with a little piece of the puzzle at the time, it's really not going to move the needle in the new world over the next 10 years. Companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they're looking at this holistic process rather than just a tiny little piece of improvement at a time. Let's move on, please, Andrew. Great. So I did a thesis a couple of years ago, and it was looking at reimagining recruitment. How might we add AI to speed up and improve a recruitment process? So we'll go into some of the detail a little bit later, but essentially there was a really good model by McKinsey that looked at the US job market and created a framework called Ownet, and that's 800 jobs broken up into 19 capability sets. And they looked at what AI could do versus what people could do. And they gave it a rating. Is it below human performance, median level of human performance, or significantly better than? And what it showed is that of all of the capabilities that we have and all of the things we do at work, some of the things AI does much, much better than us. And so that's basically recognizing patterns, retrieving information, planning and doing complex, very detailed, very big bits of reading. And that makes sense. There's another patch of work in the middle to do with thinking and speaking. And so AI, it's shown at the moment, can do similar levels of output as far as creating dashboards and creating language. And I find that fascinating. It's at a similar level to us at the moment. But equally importantly, that bottom section, these are the human things that we do very, very well. And AI isn't there yet. So some of those things like creating diverse and novel ideas, things that the AI has never seen before. We do this much, much better. Comprehending nuanced, emotionally heavy language, social cues, we do that better. And producing the appropriate response, someone that's deeply, deeply upset, someone that is really confused. These are things that we as humans do really, really well. So again, I challenge you, if you think of the things that we do at our work, and you think of the things that sit in the top category, searching and retrieving lots and lots of information, would you rather spend your time doing that or spending time with the people that are emotionally vulnerable or socially need our help? And so this is the challenge of restructuring processes to do less of the top and more of the bottom. Let's move on. So how might you do that? So this process is what I built in the framework for trying to answer the question of what should you automate, then what can you automate? And this process was the structure of my thesis. So the starting point for some of the questions I can see in the chat here, where do you get started? It's have a think about where you can add value. So that first one of where should you be stopping doing tasks that are a waste of your time? Where are the things that you would love to outsource, speed up, or improve? And so essentially we want to define what good looks like, what's the critical success factor, and how do you give that task rating of, transactional, transformational. That gives you a list of target tasks. Moving on to the next section, it's understanding what can AI do. So looking at that model that we showed earlier, there's a couple of things that AI can obviously do really, really well. You look at your target task list and the AI task list, and hopefully there's going to be a match with some of those things that are AI optimized. Importantly, moving on to step 3, there's a really important step here. Instead of getting automation happy, we really want to make sure that we are protecting the tasks that matter the most. And so if you think about any process, there might be a user experience that you want to retain. There might be a level of quality control that you must retain, or there could be a legal or other reason that you must do something yourself. So what are the tasks that would be negatively impacted if you automated them, and therefore you protect them, you make sure you do them yourself. Finally, after we've analyzed what that all looks like, we can redesign a new process that would say, these are the tasks I'll keep doing as a person. These are the tasks I'm going to outsource as AI. We can now start to think about which AI tools would I need to buy or build, and what new skills do I need to build so I can use this new process.
Hey, Nick, can I just interject? We had a really good question from Anne-Marie. Hey, Anne-Marie, good to see you again. And she was asking what human skills are needed to advance this kind of adoption that we're talking about. So what are those human skills that are becoming more important to help advance AI?
Yeah, good question. I'll probably answer that on 2 levels, Anne-Marie. So on the decision side of things, so sort of what we've just talked about from the analysis, I think it's understanding process mapping, value chains, and really how do you break down a process into its composite parts. That organization design type lens is a really important way of both understanding where you should do the work and also expressing to the executives and decision makers why you need to do it in these steps. So an understanding of that is really important. I would also say problem solving, just as a classic discipline, is a really important element of being able to test and critically think through whether these things make sense. That's on the decision side. On the implementation side, we'll talk about that in a little bit later with, how do you talk through training machine learning model? How do you work with the right tools and put them together? That business awareness of what does the IT team need to hear from you, and how do you write your business case to sort of pull that together? So I might pick that up towards the end as I've shown some examples, and we can talk about where do you go next from there. All right, let's shift gears. Let's get real. So we've just talked about what is AI, what can it do, what are the things that you might want to get rid of, and what are the things you might want to keep. So I want to take a change management lens for just a moment. So this is just a basic 5Ds framework for define through to deliver. And I've picked 2 tasks that might be something that we could consider automating. So when we're up front at the project, there's a lot of work that goes into interviewing stakeholders, understanding what leaders care about, building a case for change, aligning a future state vision. So this time, how could we speed it up? And I want to show you an AI use case where we can use some tools to uncover some insights out of the case for change and explore sessions, and using tools to capture verbal data to turn it into digital data so that you can move more quickly with what you do with that. Moving to the right as well, when we're at that delivery stage, we might be delivering the change and monitoring the responses, delivering change surveys and seeing what people have to say. Again, it's a lot of your time is spent reading and talking, writing post-it notes, putting it into Excel, analyzing Excel. How do you get to that really important aha moment quicker? So AI has some abilities to use tools to uncover those insights quicker, processing lots and lots of data. Why not let it do it for you? And how do we turn that into insights that you can use so you can adjust your strategy, communicate to your executive, or, improve and work with the people that need it the most? All right, let's move on to the next one. So I've pulled out these two examples on the next slide of what this might look like in a jobs framework. So in here, really quickly, we've got a couple of opportunities that are automatable. And the rule of thumb here is if it's repetitive and if it's independent, as in it doesn't need your input too much, it's probably automatable. So there's three I've highlighted here: sending out meeting invites, recording answers from participants, and distilling the insights here. Now, what matters about this is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And the first one of sending meeting invites, that's a lot of effort to get that right with a relatively low impact if we get it right. So it's a sort of task, although you could do it, you probably wouldn't. But the two bottom ones of recording answers on your behalf and helping you analyze that, it's actually low effort from an AI perspective, but it's a really high impact and helper to you. And finally, distilling insights, a little bit more work required to set it up properly, but a huge benefit if you can surface those insights quickly with the help of some tools. All right, next slide. We're looking at the change adoption survey. So similarly, we're processing a lot of data, and a couple of the parts of this process you'd automate, minimal value, but that helping me find insights quicker part is really, really useful in those last two sections. Okay, we're going to have a look at some examples now, and we're going to talk about some of the things that you can do right now, straight after this call today. Go and download, play with, and experiment with some really good tools that I hope are useful for you. So the idea here is, how do we use AI tools to speed up data capture to help us get insights more quickly and more usefully? I wanted to show you some accuracy with some real examples and provide you a bit of a steer with how useful this might be on the job. We've got 4 tools that I'm going to show you today that increase in complexity. The first one is Microsoft Lens, and it's one of a suite of tools that do optical character recognition. And we're going to think of that when you might be in a workshop and you've got lots and lots of post-it notes and you have to type them up later. What if a tool could do that for you more quickly? Number 2, I love this tool, Otter AI. It helps us turn meeting notes into real notes. So if you're having a Zoom call or a Teams meeting, even a whole bunch of people in a room together, it identifies the speakers, it types it all up for you, and it turns speech into text so you can do other great things with that information. We're going to talk about Monkey Learn as well, which is where you're starting to pull together lots of data into a dashboard, displaying trends and analyzing some really important information. And finally, a fantastic cool tool called Remesh, which lets you survey up to 1,000 people at once and instantly turn it into a report and instantly use this information to save you many, many hours of analysis later on. We'll keep the Iron Man theme here just to show you how the different tools perform with a quote from a movie, just so you can see how well it works. All right, first tool, so Microsoft Lens. So the key here is this tool is a phone app. You can use it quickly. It's free, and it helps you turn written words into text. That text you can copy, paste straight into Excel or PowerPoint. It's really, really easy, and it works reasonably well. On the next slide, I had a quote from one of the Iron Man movies. What I thought was interesting about this is with neat writing, which, let's be honest, never happens in a workshop, it's really good, and I actually got 100% of the words right. But with more realistic doctor's scribble, what you'd expect someone to actually write, it didn't do so well. So the key concept number one for if you're about to start using tools is garbage in, garbage out. The tool can only work with what it's got. So if you're providing it with garbage data, poor quality information, that information will flow through to whatever analysis tools you're using. And it's going to really degrade the whole point of doing the exercise. So if you were to use a tool like this, it'd be really important to let your participants know, we're going to be analyzing this in a big cloud of information later. Please, please, please. Yeah, doctor's scribble was much worse. I know. That was the worst I could write, Karen. Please, please write clearly, because we want to use this information in our dashboard later. Okay, moving on to the next tool, and this, I love this, and I see a few other people are using Otter as well. This is a phone and desktop app that can turn speech into text. I find it very useful in things like change adoption interviews, case of change, foundational work, and even the change impact assessments themselves. Why I love it is it learns over time. It's specifically designed for meetings, so the filters pick up your voice and the participants' voices. It'll instantly go, oh, there's 4 different speakers on here. You can then type in that person's name, and any subsequent meetings you do, it recognizes that person's name automatically. Like anything, there might be jargon. We might be working with a medical company, we might be working with an oil company, and there's going to be specific things that the tool probably won't know off the bat. But you can adapt that, and you can say, oh, this acronym is actually whatever it is. And it'll pick it up every time it hears it again in the future. So just speeding up your workflow every time with a really, really clear list. What's valuable about this for me is imagine all of those insights, all of those things that rich data and information you hear in an interview, you can now search it 3 months, 6 months later. So if you want to see, has that trend matured? Has that information done anything different? The data is then displayed in this beautiful interface where you can click on one of the summary keywords and see how many times it's come up. You can see in what context was that insight raised. You can produce instantly a word cloud that you can show where the volume of information is gone. And critically, you can use this data in other ways because it's already digitized. So I highly, highly recommend Otter AI. If you've heard of it before, awesome. If you haven't used it yet, go and download it today. Let's look at the next one on how does it perform though. So using the same quote I'd written on the Post-it note.
Nick, 1 second. I think this is a really good point. We've got a great question from the star. Hi, the star. I think it's a good point to raise this information analysis and what Otter's doing here. They'd like to hear more about sentiment identification and categorization, and if this has been done to support it. Is a tool like Otter able to do this?
No, it's not. So, but that's a great question, because the next tool I'll talk to does exactly that. Sentiment analysis doesn't work with something like Otter. It's not analyzing the text, it's categorizing the text. So it'll categorize it in the sense of what word is this and how many times has that word appeared and who is the speaker. So think of this as a capture tool that allows you to quickly play back what you've seen and heard and find the topics that matter to you. The sentiments, the topics, the nouns, the entities, that's going to be in the next tool that I'll show you in more detail.
There you go. Nick's got you covered this time.
All right. So, something like Otter, just really quickly, again, highly rate it. Go and use it today. Absolutely no barriers. It's not fully accurate. Like I mentioned, some of the jargon might get trapped. So in this case, it didn't recognize "it's good to meet you, Dr. Banner." It heard it as "to better." But I fix it once and it'll remember that for next time. So really, really good. All right. You were right on the money with the one we wanted to talk to. So sentiment analysis, trends, really getting the insights out of our change campaign. So this is a tool called Monkey Learn. And if you're looking to go that next step in complexity, I highly recommend this tool as something to try. Why? Well, you could manage a whole change campaign and all of your channels. So interviews, social media, the post-it notes example we gave before, any information you're collecting on email, any information you're collecting on any of your channels, you can add this into the tool. And what's great about this is that it automatically creates a dashboard. It automatically categorizes all of the things over time. And so you can actually start to see the whole reason we're doing this. So what? What are people saying and what does that mean? What are people saying? How do they feel? I've done some work to mitigate the change, and has that had an effect? So this is really useful. And this is the first time we're talking about really customizing and really designing an intelligent solution to use your time to analyze and letting the tool do a lot of the collecting for you. So this is an example where we've got lots of different little machine learning models that will run in the background. Things like sentiment analysis, as you mentioned earlier, finding topics, and you can start to use survey data out of SurveyMonkey or information out of your recorded talks to produce some information. So looking at the next slide, we'll have a quick look at how do you get that. So in this example, this is using a machine learning application. What is machine learning? If you hadn't heard it before, it was just like learning for us. It's teaching someone or something how to do a particular task and rewarding it for when it gets it right, to say, yes, you've done the right thing. Yes, you've categorized it that way. That is the correct response. So on this screen, we're seeing the back end of Monkey Learn, where I'm training the model how to recognize the Iron Man quote and how to make sure that it's categorized that correctly. So the interface has lots of pre-trained capabilities that are already ready to go. But for my purposes, I had something that I wanted to train it on. And that was using survey data into 4 categories that I've already been using, which is strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. So what this is an example of is importing survey information that had already been rated at those 4 levels, and then clicking through on each answer to say, this is agree, this is disagree, this is strongly agree, and teaching the model with a series of clicks what that question means. And so what that means is that we can train the model to fit our processes. We can train the model to be smarter and to learn that that does mean agree or that does mean disagree. There are trade-offs with this. It takes a little bit of time. You know, that after about half an hour's work, it was about 60% accurate. After a day or two, it gets a lot better. And after a few weeks or months, it will be very, very clever. But again, garbage in, garbage out. If we're not doing good training, it's not going to pick up the right insights. And there's also a risk of biases. You know, if the person that's training it has particular views or, you know, thinks something is overly important or not important, that bias will carry through and get reinforced over time. It's for another talk. I think it's a whole topic in itself, ethics and biases in AI, but it is something I wanted to mention, that we need to use these tools properly, and we need to make sure that we're taking a pause at the right time to validate and check it. Let's move on to the next slide, Andrew. Cool. So really practically, here's an example of just a basic spreadsheet that I've built and something that you might want to play with yourselves and use your own survey data to train. So what I've pulled is the standard classifiers that Monkey Learn had. So that's the sentiment analysis, that's the business classifier, the topic classifier, and some of the keywords. And so the great thing here is it's automatically pulled out of each row all of those things. I didn't have to do anything other than hit go. The AI Levant model is the one I'd shown you in the previous slide, where I trained it to tell whether it's agree or disagree. And then the final check, the darker blue, that's my rating. So really importantly, the machine will do a lot of work for us, but it's still our job to do the final check to make sure that what you're putting through is actually correct. What you'll see here is that the model has picked up correctly rows 1 and 2. So the positive and negative sentiment that it's automatically picked up is right, but the third row is not. And so this is one of those learning opportunities where you'd go back to your model and go, actually, that is a negative. So that is an agree or a positive response, learn. And so you'd be tweaking this for the first little while until it's performing as you expect it to. Okay. The last one I want to talk to before we open up into some question time is Remesh. So Remesh is a tool that is really, really impressive, but it's also one that's a bit more expensive. Remesh is a live conversation capture tool that would mean you could have a very, very large group of people where you're trying to understand what they think. You can automatically rank against their responses to compare in really high quality data and instantly get the Excel data set and instantly get the PowerPoint presentation as soon as you finish the call. Quite honestly, this would save you days of time, but it is much more expensive than some of the other tools. So this is an example of, again, bringing together all of those capabilities into one platform to uncover insights analysis. So just to pause there for a moment, I've shown you in quick succession 4 services. These are top line AI services though. These are the things that you can buy off the shelf. You might be wondering, how do I pull this together and customize it into my own bespoke tool set? That's very, very possible, right? So Amazon Web Services, IBM, Google, they've all got these fantastic suites of software that's very approachable and very easy for you to get started with. These stacks allow you to build your own tools, but you might be needing to work with a data scientist or an AI practitioner or one of their product reps to help you get some of that information. In my experience with some reading and playing, you can get quite advanced quite quickly. And that's where I learned some of my capabilities to tweak the monkey learn model that I showed you earlier. One thing I'd also mention, it's not uncommon for companies to build their own working prototypes in 6 weeks or less. It's very quick because of just how good these tools are to get started with. Okay, before we open up for extra questions, I just want to mention some of the ethics and the trade-offs. So, we're dealing with people here, and these are tools that are designed to help us get insights with the people. So a couple of obvious things is data security. We don't want to go down the path of automating tools only to find that no one wants to use the tool because they're worried about what happens to the data. It's a very real and important conversation you need to have, and you need to understand what happens to the data you're collecting. Who owns it? How does it get used? What happens if there's a leak? Can someone else search it and identify the speaker? It's a really important thing to think about. Finally, that opt-in and opt-out from tool use. So what we've just shown are some really useful things. We've all been on Zoom and Teams probably for the last 2 years actively as part of our work. And often there's that opt-out, I don't want to be recorded. You need to bake into your workflows similar opt-in, opt-out elements for your participants. And don't lose the conversation or the pen and paper element, which is ultimately all we're trying to do is capture insights. These tools help us speed it up, but if our participants don't want to use it, we can't use it. From a trade-offs perspective, there's that some of those data elements lead to resistance. People don't want to use it. That's understandable. Very real trade-off for me as a consultant has been integration. All of these tools I've shown you, I've used in my own systems, but most of the time, if you're working for a client, you might not get access to their APIs, or the IT team might not let you use or integrate any of these things. So there's a very real element of, can I actually use the systems? And the third one I'd mention is just setup time. So some of the tools are able to be set up in 5 minutes. Others will take days, weeks, or months to set up properly. So depending on the value you're trying to get out of the tool, that trade-off might be something you really need to think through as well. That's all I wanted to talk to today. Andrew, any questions that we wanted to highlight from the chat?
Yeah, we had one from Claire. She's had to go on a coaching client, but that's all good. Love the Claire. She was our previous speaker. She was sort of saying, well, with this big transition that you're talking about in the next sort of 50% that Microsoft and IBM are predicting in terms of job roles.
Yep.
What's needed to help people transition in this? And I know I've personally worked for quite a few hubs. I know Christine and I do a lot around human-centered design, coaching, that kind of stuff to help people reimagine and get back to creativity. But from your end, from what you've seen, Nick, how are maybe even large businesses tackling this big impact that AI and automation are having on just your regular operating models in most companies?
Yeah, great question. I think what the trends that I'm seeing is that improved data literacy is a big foundation to understanding how some of the AI tools will work. So for companies that are interested in automating anything, it really comes down to understanding data, collecting data, valuing quality data. So improving the staff's literacy and appreciation for what data quality and controls means is a huge step forward into seeing the value in optimizing processes and seeing the changes. And by doing so, they'll also help cement themselves as valuable employees on the right learning pathway.
Amazing. Thanks, Nick. Folks, we've got about 5 minutes for questions. Jump into the chat, and if you've got a question for Nick, we'll have a look at that.
Lots of stuff in the chat. I'm just having a quick read through now. Natasha asked a question about the methodology for Monkey Learn. I haven't read the documentation of Monkey Learn's methodologies, Natasha. I don't. The sentiment analysis is a bit of a black box, unfortunately, so I couldn't tell you how they got there.
Ryan's got a great question. Can AI learn empathy? And this, I think, ties into, it's less about a model, it's more how we train it, right?
Well, that's a really, really interesting question. So empathy.
I think we had a post about it on LinkedIn as well.
We did see one.
Oh, yeah.
So empathy is a great example of something that computers, are not good at technically and traditionally, but counterintuitively, empathy is something that is really ripe to train for a computer. Now, it's programmable, it's a recipe, it's if this, then that. But the important distinction I would like to make here is, we can give a computer a recipe and it will follow it perfectly every single time. But we're more complex. The computer can be your shoulder to cry on, but it's never going to be there to cry with you. And I think this is important. It can know what to say, it can know what it can do, it can know that if this response, then this is what it should do. But there's that human gap that, as far as I've seen, and as far as many people in the AI world would have seen, it can't replace us. It might know what to do, and it might tell you and suggest what you might do, but it can't replace us. But it's a very, very interesting area of research that's expanding.
I agree. And if I think about it, empathy is not necessarily innate to everybody. I think, if we think about a lot of businesses, some businesses might be very tech focused or tech skill focused, and empathy is just not a natural cultural thing. So, it's almost like, how do we train it to have empathy if, as humans, sometimes we even find it hard at certain points to empathize in the right way that translates to the other person. So it's a very interesting question there. I think we need a whole new topic on ethics and empathy. And
yeah.
Bring it on.
That'll be a good one. That'll be a good one.
The final word I'd like to leave with all of you is really just about reminding you that these are tools. You have a role, and a very valuable role to play. So, while we can augment or accelerate our work with some of these tools, you still need to do the design, the quality control, and keep checking and sense checking. Does the data align with what I'm seeing? You are the person who's accountable to your client. You are the person who needs to present the right insights at the right time to the right people, change course and make the decisions. The data is only part of the picture, and these tools only help you speed it up, but it's really important to check that it's the right story it's telling. So it should augment and accelerate, but you are still the practitioner to find the right answers. And you need to focus on what are the soft skills I need to bring to the table to make sense of this great new data and insights that I'm being shown.
It's almost like soft skills are now the new hard skills, because if robots
Soft
are going to
skills are
take
new hard
over the automatic, the robotic, the technical, so as change leaders, if you feel like you're doing robotic, repetitive stuff, that part's probably going to go away very, very quickly. Great point, Nick. Christina, do you want to take us through?
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump on to the next slide. So really exciting stuff for you guys today. We have a URL code there that you'll be able to scan if you'd love to join our competition. It's competition time. If you're in Australia, the next accelerator course is kicking off, well, has kicked off October 9th. But the next one is the foundation kicking off early 2022. And then we've got the advanced as well kicking off early 2022. In the US, or even if you're on this side of the world, even if you're in the UK, the US course is going to be the great option for you from a timing perspective. So on the 13th of November, we're kicking that course off. It's a chance to win a seat on the course. And of course, we're really, really proud that we've got our badges there. These badges follow you throughout your whole career. So keep a note of that, is that this is something that you will be accredited for. This is something you can take globally. I mean, I was in Australia, now I'm in the US, and these badges do come and they sit on my resume, and it's a great discussion point, you know, even when you're discussing this with recruiters, looking at more opportunities as well. So join the competition and we'll get back to you. And then we would love your feedback. This is the 7th one that we've done, the 7th Space for Change. And we always want to know, what do you want to know about? So please scan this QR code. It's a little bit different. And this is where we have our feedback form. We'd love to hear exactly what you want. Hugo has also put it in the chat if you prefer the link. And the last reminder is join Space for Change on LinkedIn. If you'd like to recap this, if you'd like to access our archives and our recordings of our previous sessions, join our community on LinkedIn. We'd love to see you there. Jump in there, collaborate with us, and we're always there to support you.
And with that said, a hearty thank you. Thanks, Christina. Thank you, everybody,
so
for your
much.
energy, for your collaboration. And like Christina said, every topic we present is voted for by our audience. We're very big on human-centered design. We're very big on collaboration.
Yes.
And I think these are the skills we need going into this future of AI, so that we can avoid the bias. We can talk about topics of ethics a lot better, as opposed to leaving it just to the technology peeps out there to automate and program it. So thanks for being a part of the conversation. Nick, fantastic presentation. Round of applause for Nick.
Woo woo.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And as Christina said, recording will pop the link in the Space for Change group on LinkedIn. Have a wonderful, wonderful intergalactic day and an interstellar week. And we'll catch you next month at the next Space for Change. See you later.
Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.